What if I told you that your suffering, your struggles, and even your deepest pain could be the key to an unshakable sense of purpose? That the very thing you try to avoid, pain, loss, uncertainty, might be the path to something greater? It might sound strange, even uncomfortable, but history has shown us that some of the most extraordinary individuals didn't find meaning in a life free of hardship. Instead, they found it because of hardship. This is what Viktor Frankl, a man who survived one of the darkest chapters in human history, discovered. And it's a discovery that could completely change the way you see your own life. Imagine being stripped of everything: your home, your family, your identity. Imagine being forced into a concentration camp, knowing that every single day could be your last. This was Viktor Frankl's reality. A Jewish psychiatrist living in Austria during World War II, Frankl was sent to the Auschwitz concentration camp in 1942. He lost his wife, his parents, and nearly everyone he loved. He had no idea if he would survive another day. Yet, even in those unimaginable conditions, he noticed something remarkable. Some prisoners, despite enduring the same suffering, held on to a sense of purpose. They were the ones who found reasons to keep going, even when everything seemed hopeless. They gave their last piece of bread to others. They encouraged those who were about to break. They carried themselves with a quiet dignity despite the horror surrounding them. And in many cases, they were the ones who lasted the longest. Frankl's experience in the camps became the foundation of his life's work. He wrote about it in his famous book, Man's Search for Meaning, which has been read by millions of people around the world. His core idea was simple yet profound. The primary motivation in human life is not pleasure, as Freud believed, nor power, as Adler believed, but meaning. When people have a strong reason to live, something that matters more than their suffering, they can endure almost anything. It's not the external circumstances that determine whether we survive and thrive. It's the internal sense of purpose that we carry within us. This brings us to the central question of this video. What makes life truly meaningful? If Frankl was right, then meaning is not something we passively receive. It's something we must actively find. It's not given to us by wealth, fame, or comfort. It's something deeper, something personal. Some people find meaning in their work, in creating something that benefits others. Some find it in their relationships, in the love they give and receive. And some find it in suffering itself, by transforming pain into wisdom, by refusing to let hardship break them, by using their struggles to help others. The problem is that many people today feel lost. Depression, anxiety, and existential dread are more common than ever. We live in an era where endless distractions keep us occupied but not fulfilled. Many people chase happiness, thinking that if they just get that promotion, that new car, that perfect relationship, they'll finally feel whole. But as soon as they get those things, they realize something is still missing. That's because happiness is a byproduct of meaning, not the other way around. If you don't know why you're doing something, no amount of success will satisfy you. We're going to explore Viktor Frankl's philosophy and how it can help you find something worth living for. Something that makes your suffering bearable. Something that gives you a reason to wake up in the morning, no matter how difficult life gets. We'll break down Frankl's key ideas, explore why so many people feel empty today, and most importantly, learn how you can apply these lessons in your own life. Because at the end of the day, life will ask you a question. What will your answer be? Viktor Frankl was not just another philosopher or psychologist writing about abstract theories from the comfort of an academic office. He lived through one of the darkest periods in human history and emerged with insights that continue to impact millions of lives today. Born in Vienna, Austria in 1905, Frankl was drawn to psychology and philosophy from a young age. He was particularly interested in understanding the human mind and what drives people's actions. As a student, he studied under two of the greatest psychological thinkers of the time, Sigmund Freud, who believed that human behavior was driven by the pursuit of pleasure, and Alfred Adler, who argued that the fundamental human drive was a desire for power and superiority. But Frankl wasn't fully convinced by either theory. He believed there was something deeper at play, something neither pleasure nor power could fully explain. This belief would be put to the ultimate test when he was forced into the horrors of a Nazi concentration camp. In 1942, Frankl, along with his wife and family, was arrested and sent to a concentration camp simply because they were Jewish. He lost everything overnight: his career, his freedom, his family. Eventually, he was transported to Auschwitz, the infamous death camp where millions perished. Stripped of his possessions, his dignity, and even his identity, reduced to a mere number tattooed on his arm, Frankl was thrown into a world of unimaginable cruelty. Hunger, disease, violence, and the constant presence of death were his daily reality. In that environment, many prisoners quickly lost hope. They gave up on life, let despair consume them, and often died shortly afterwards. But Frankl noticed something fascinating. Survival in the camps wasn't necessarily about physical strength or intelligence. It wasn't always the strongest or the healthiest who survived. It was the ones who had a reason to keep going. Frankl observed that prisoners who had a sense of meaning, something to live for, were far more likely to endure the suffering. Some found meaning in small acts of kindness, like sharing a piece of bread with another prisoner. Others held on to the hope of seeing their loved ones again. Frankl himself survived in part by imagining himself giving lectures about his experiences after the war, teaching people about the power of meaning. He would close his eyes and see himself in a warm lecture hall speaking to students about the lessons he had learned in Auschwitz. This mental image gave him a sense of purpose, a reason to endure. He later described this realization with a quote from Friedrich Nietzsche: "Those who have a why to live can bear almost anyhow." In other words, when people have a deep reason to keep going, they can survive even the most brutal conditions. Frankl's time in the camps was more than just an experience of suffering. It was a test of his beliefs. He saw firsthand that meaning was not just an intellectual idea, it was a matter of life and death. He noticed that once a prisoner lost their sense of purpose, they would often deteriorate rapidly and die. But those who had a sense of meaning, even in the face of extreme suffering, were able to push forward. This realization became the foundation of his psychological theory. Meaning is not something that is given to us. It is something we must find. After surviving the Holocaust, Frankl dedicated the rest of his life to spreading this message. He wrote Man's Search for Meaning, which became one of the most influential books of the 20th century, and he developed a new school of psychology that centered around the pursuit of meaning: logotherapy. After the war, Frankl didn't just return to his old life. He came back with a mission: to teach people how to find meaning, even in suffering. He developed logotherapy, a revolutionary approach to psychology that differed from the dominant theories of his time. The name itself comes from the Greek word logos, which means meaning, and therapy, which means healing. Unlike other forms of psychotherapy that focused on past traumas or unconscious desires, logotherapy was about helping people discover the purpose that would guide their lives. Frankl argued that the primary human drive is not pleasure, as Freud suggested, nor the pursuit of power, as Adler believed, but rather the search for meaning. This idea was a radical departure from mainstream psychology. Freud's theory, known as the pleasure principle, suggested that people are primarily motivated by the desire to experience pleasure and avoid pain. While this might explain some human behaviors, Frankl believed it was insufficient. After all, many people endure hardship voluntarily for the sake of something greater. Athletes push through intense physical pain to achieve greatness. Parents sacrifice their comfort for their children. Soldiers risk their lives for a cause they believe in. If pleasure were the ultimate goal, why would anyone willingly suffer for something? Similarly, Adler's theory of power dynamics argued that humans are driven by the need to feel superior, to control their environment, and to exert influence over others. While power can certainly be a motivating force, it also fails to explain why people sometimes give up power for something greater than themselves. Why do some people devote their lives to service, to love, or to artistic creation rather than personal dominance? Frankl saw something deeper. He saw that people were willing to endure suffering, to sacrifice, and to push beyond their limits if they had a meaning that made it all worthwhile. So how do we find meaning? According to logotherapy, there are 3 primary ways to discover purpose in life: through work or creation. When people engage in meaningful work, whether it's art, science, teaching, or even building a business, they often feel a deep sense of purpose. Work becomes more than just a way to earn a living. It becomes an expression of who they are. Frankl believed that work should be about contribution, not just survival. If you feel lost, ask yourself, what can I create? How can I add value to the world? Even in the concentration camps, prisoners who found ways to be useful, helping others, fixing things, writing, often had a greater will to survive. Through love and relationships, love is one of the most powerful sources of meaning. Frankl himself survived the concentration camps by holding on to the memory of his wife, picturing her face, and imagining their reunion. Love gives us a reason to live beyond ourselves. It's not just about romantic relationships, deep friendships, family bonds, and even love for humanity as a whole can provide an unshakable sense of purpose. If you feel disconnected, ask yourself, who do I love? Who do I want to be there for? Who gives my life meaning? Through suffering and struggle, perhaps the most profound and difficult source of meaning comes from suffering itself. Frankl argued that when suffering is unavoidable, we must find a way to give it meaning. He saw this firsthand in Auschwitz. Some prisoners, despite unbearable conditions, found ways to turn their pain into something greater. They refused to let suffering break them. They used their hardship as a way to grow, to learn, to deepen their character. If you're going through a difficult time, ask yourself, how can I use this pain? How can I turn my struggle into strength? Frankl's message is clear. Meaning is not something you wait to receive. It is something you actively seek. You don't find meaning by chasing happiness. You don't find it by avoiding suffering. You find it by dedicating yourself to something greater than yourself. Whether it's through your work, your relationships, or even your struggles, meaning is always within reach. The question is, are you willing to look for it? In today's world, more people than ever are feeling lost, empty, and disconnected. Depression and anxiety are on the rise, and many people struggle to find a real sense of purpose in their lives. Despite having access to more technology, entertainment, and comfort than any generation before us, there is a growing feeling that something is missing. This feeling isn't just personal, it's widespread. You see it in the number of people turning to distractions like social media, binge-watching shows for hours, endlessly scrolling through their phones, or chasing temporary pleasures that never seem to satisfy them. Why is this happening? Why do so many people feel like they have no direction in life? The answer lies in something Viktor Frankl called the existential vacuum. a deep emptiness that comes from a loss of meaning. Frankl observed that many people, especially in modern society, experience a lack of real purpose in their lives. He argued that when humans lose a sense of meaning, they don't just remain neutral, they start to suffer. This suffering may not always appear as dramatic existential despair. Sometimes it shows up as a quiet sense of emptiness, boredom, or restlessness. People try to fill this void in different ways. Some turn to pleasure, seeking happiness in entertainment, sex, food, or substances. Others look for success and status, believing that wealth or fame will finally make them feel whole. Some people try to escape through constant distraction, keeping themselves busy with social media, video games, or endless work. But no matter how much they consume, buy, or achieve, the emptiness never fully disappears. That's because these things don't address the real problem, a lack of meaning. One of the biggest reasons this crisis has worsened in modern times is the rise of nihilism, the belief that life has no inherent meaning. With the decline of traditional values, religion, and community structures, many people struggle to find a reason to exist beyond basic survival. In the past, people often found meaning through shared cultural or religious beliefs, family traditions, or a strong sense of duty to their communities. But in a world that increasingly tells us that life is just a random accident, that there is no deeper purpose beyond personal pleasure, many are left wondering, why should I even try? This kind of thinking leads to a dangerous cycle. Without meaning, people feel empty, and to escape that emptiness, they seek pleasure or distraction, which only makes them feel more disconnected in the long run. Frankl believed that this existential vacuum was one of the greatest psychological problems of the modern world. He noticed that when people lacked meaning, they often turned to destructive behaviors, addiction, aggression, depression, or extreme apathy. He saw it in patients who had everything society told them they should want: good jobs, financial stability, comfort, yet they felt miserable and unfulfilled. This is why, even today, we see celebrities, billionaires, and highly successful people struggling with mental health issues, substance abuse, or even suicidal thoughts. They have everything they thought would make them happy, yet they still feel lost. That's because material success alone cannot fill the void left by a lack of meaning. One of the biggest culprits in deepening this crisis is consumerism, the idea that happiness can be bought. We live in a world where people are constantly told that if they just buy the right products, wear the right brands, or own the latest technology, they will finally be happy. Advertisers and corporations fuel this mindset because it keeps people consuming. But the problem is that this kind of happiness is always temporary. A new phone, a luxury car, a fancy vacation, they might bring excitement for a little while, but the feeling never lasts. Eventually, people go back to feeling empty, so they chase the next thing, and the cycle continues. This is why so many people are addicted to shopping, material possessions, and the endless pursuit of more. But no matter how much they acquire, it never fills the deeper need for purpose. Social media has also made the problem worse. Instead of looking inward to find meaning, many people now look outward, constantly comparing their lives to others. Platforms like Instagram create a false reality where it seems like everyone else is happy, successful, and living their best life. This fuels feelings of inadequacy and loneliness because people start to believe that if they aren't rich, famous, or constantly having fun, they must be failing at life. The irony is that even the people who seem to have perfect lives online often feel empty themselves. Many influencers and celebrities have spoken out about feeling miserable despite their success, proving that external validation doesn't create real fulfillment. The real issue is that modern society prioritizes comfort over meaning. People are taught to avoid discomfort at all costs, to take the easy path, to seek pleasure, to distract themselves whenever they feel uneasy. But Frankl argued that meaning often comes through struggle. A life free of difficulty might sound appealing, but in reality, it often leads to boredom, apathy, and a sense of worthlessness. Think about the most fulfilling moments in your life. Chances are, they didn't come from times of pure comfort. They probably came from overcoming a challenge, achieving something difficult, or pushing through adversity. Frankl saw this truth clearly in the concentration camps. Those who found a reason to endure, even in suffering, were the ones who survived. Yet today, we are conditioned to avoid hardship instead of embracing it as a path to growth and meaning. So what's the solution? How do we break free from this cycle of emptiness and find real meaning? The answer is to stop looking for happiness and start looking for purpose. Happiness is a fleeting emotion, it comes and goes. But meaning is deeper, it gives you something to live for even when life is hard. Instead of chasing pleasure, start asking yourself deeper questions. What do I care about? What am I willing to struggle for? What impact do I want to have on the world? True fulfillment comes from dedicating yourself to something greater than yourself. Whether it's creating something valuable, helping others, pursuing a passion, or growing as a person. Frankl's philosophy teaches us that we don't have to be victims of modern emptiness. We have the power to create meaning in our own lives. The problem is that most people don't take the time to reflect on what truly matters to them. They get caught in the distractions of the modern world, numbing themselves with entertainment, consumption, or temporary pleasures. But if you want to live a meaningful life, you have to consciously choose meaning over mindless distraction. You have to be willing to embrace struggle, to seek out purpose, and to dedicate yourself to something beyond yourself. At the end of the day, the choice is yours. You can continue chasing temporary pleasure, always feeling like something is missing, or you can start searching for real meaning through your work, your relationships, and even your struggles. The world will always offer distractions, but the deeper question remains: what are you truly living for? One of the most powerful ways to find meaning in life is through work and contribution. Work is not just about earning money or passing the time, it's about creating, building, and contributing to something larger than yourself. Many people feel lost or unfulfilled because their work doesn't align with their values. They wake up every morning feeling like they're just going through the motions, doing tasks that don't excite or inspire them. But when your work is meaningful, when it reflects who you are and what you care about, it gives your life direction. It provides a reason to wake up in the morning, a sense of purpose that keeps you moving forward even when life gets tough. Viktor Frankl believed that having a mission or a responsibility in life can give people the strength to endure even the worst hardships. Even in the horrors of Auschwitz, Frankl saw how work and contribution played a role in survival. Some prisoners found meaning in helping others, giving encouragement, sharing their last piece of bread, or even just offering a kind word. These acts of service and contribution gave them something to live for. Frankl himself took on the role of a doctor in the camps, using his knowledge of psychology to help fellow prisoners cope with the trauma they were experiencing. He had nothing, not even freedom, but he still found a way to contribute. He later wrote that those who had a sense of responsibility towards something, whether it was their family, their work, or a personal mission, were more likely to survive. This proves a fundamental truth. When you feel that your work matters, you are willing to endure difficulties to see it through. Many people throughout history have turned their suffering into purpose through meaningful work. Holocaust survivors who lost everything went on to build new lives, not just for themselves but for others. The same pattern can be seen in ex-prisoners who, after experiencing years of hardship, went on to help rehabilitate others. guiding young people away from crime. Trauma victims, too, have used their experiences to become therapists, social workers, and activists, ensuring that no one else has to suffer alone. The lesson here is clear. Your work can be a source of meaning if it aligns with something deeper than just survival or personal gain. But how do you find meaningful work? The key is to align your work with your values. Ask yourself, what do I care about? What kind of impact do I want to have? If your current job doesn't give you that sense of fulfillment, look for ways to bring meaning into it. Sometimes it's not about the job itself, but about how you do it. A teacher, for example, can see their work as just a way to pay the bills, or they can see it as an opportunity to shape the next generation. A janitor in a hospital might think they're just cleaning floors, or they might recognize that their work helps create a safe, sanitary space for patients to heal. The way you frame your work matters just as much as the work itself. If you're in a job that feels meaningless, consider creating something bigger than yourself. This could mean starting a side project that reflects your passion, volunteering, or even shifting careers if necessary. Many people feel stuck because they believe work is just about survival, but work should be about expression, service, and impact. Maybe you're passionate about art. How can you use that to create something meaningful? Maybe you love problem solving. How can you apply that in a way that helps others? Even if you're working in a job that doesn't seem meaningful right now, you can bring purpose into it by focusing on how your work affects others, learning new skills, and finding ways to grow. Frankl taught that life is not about avoiding suffering, but about finding a reason to endure it. This applies to work as well. Even the most fulfilling careers come with struggles, but if you see those struggles as part of something greater, they become meaningful instead of draining. If you don't know where to start, begin by reflecting on what excites you, what problems in the world make you feel something, and how your skills can contribute to a cause. Maybe it's mentoring younger people, maybe it's working in a creative field, maybe it's starting your own business with a mission that aligns with your values. Whatever it is, make sure it's something that feels bigger than just you. At the end of the day, you don't just work to live, you live to contribute. Whether that contribution is in your career, your side projects, or your personal relationships, finding work that matters is one of the most powerful ways to build a meaningful life. If you feel lost or unfulfilled, ask yourself, am I just working for a paycheck, or am I working for a purpose? Because the answer to that question could change everything. One of the deepest sources of meaning in life comes from love and relationships. Viktor Frankl believed that love is the highest human experience, even greater than work, success, or personal achievements. He saw love as something that gives life purpose, something that makes suffering bearable, and turns ordinary moments into something profound. Many people search for meaning in their careers, material success, or personal accomplishments, but without deep, meaningful relationships, life often feels empty. Love, whether it's romantic love, the love of family, or the bond of true friendship, connects us to something beyond ourselves. It reminds us that we are not alone and that our existence matters to others. Frankl's belief in the power of love was not just an abstract idea, it was something he experienced firsthand in Auschwitz. While he was imprisoned, suffering from starvation, exhaustion, and the constant fear of death, the thought of his wife kept him alive. He didn't know whether she was dead or alive, but in his mind, she was with him. He would picture her face, imagine their conversations, and hold on to the memory of the love they shared. Even though he had nothing, no possessions, no freedom, no certainty about the future, the thought of his wife gave him the strength to endure. This was one of his most powerful realizations. Even in the most hopeless situations, love can sustain us. It doesn't have to be physical or even reciprocated at that moment. Just knowing that love exists, that we have given and received love in our lives, can give us the courage to keep going. But love is not just about romance. Many people think that love is only about finding a soulmate, but Frankl saw love as something much bigger. Love can be found in deep friendships, in family bonds, and in acts of kindness toward others. Some of the most meaningful relationships in life are not based on romance but on connection, loyalty, and shared experiences. A true friend who stands by you in hard times, a parent who sacrifices for their child, a mentor who guides you, these are all forms of love that give life meaning. If you think about the moments in your life that have meant the most, chances are they involve the people you love. However, not all forms of love lead to meaning. There is a big difference between real love and attachment or dependency. Real love is about giving, about genuinely caring for another person's well-being without expecting something in return. It's about seeing someone for who they truly are and appreciating them, flaws and all. Dependency, on the other hand, is about needing someone to fill an emptiness inside you. It's about clinging to someone because you're afraid of being alone or because you believe they are the key to your happiness. Many relationships fail because they are based on dependency rather than real love. When we expect another person to complete us or fix our emotional wounds, we set ourselves up for disappointment. Love is not about losing yourself in someone else. It's about becoming a better version of yourself while sharing your life with another person. So how do you cultivate deep, meaningful relationships? The first step is to become someone worth loving. Many people focus on finding the right person, but the truth is, a strong relationship starts with being the right person. This means developing your character, working on your emotional health, and becoming someone who brings value to others. If you want meaningful friendships, ask yourself, am I a good friend? Do I listen, support, and encourage others? If you want a deep romantic relationship, ask, am I emotionally mature? Do I bring positivity and strength into a relationship? Or do I expect the other person to make me happy? True love is built on mutual respect, trust, and personal growth. Another key to meaningful relationships is being present. In today's world, many relationships suffer because people are too distracted. Social media, work stress, and personal insecurities often get in the way of truly being with the people we care about. How often do we sit with friends or family but spend most of the time looking at our phones? How many relationships weaken because one or both people stop making an effort to connect? Love isn't just about words, it's about presence, about truly seeing and understanding another person. One of the most powerful things you can do for someone you love is to give them your full attention, to make them feel heard, valued, and appreciated. Building strong relationships also requires vulnerability. Many people struggle with deep connections because they are afraid to open up. They fear rejection, betrayal, or being seen as weak. But true intimacy, whether in friendships, family, or romance, comes from allowing yourself to be seen. This means sharing your thoughts, fears, and dreams with those you trust. It means being honest, even when it's uncomfortable. Frankl believed that love was one of the most powerful forces in human existence because it allowed people to transcend themselves. When we truly love someone, we put their well-being above our own, we make sacrifices, and we commit to something greater than just our individual needs. Finally, meaningful relationships require forgiveness and patience. No relationship is perfect. There will always be misunderstandings, conflicts, and moments of frustration. But love is not about perfection, it's about commitment and growth. Many relationships fail because people expect flawless compatibility instead of seeing challenges as opportunities to grow together. Instead of walking away at the first sign of conflict, strong relationships are built by learning to work through differences, communicate honestly, and forgive each other's imperfections. Love is a choice that we make every day, to show up, to care, to support, and to stay committed even when things aren't easy. At the end of the day, love is what makes life worth living. It's what gives meaning to our struggles and joy to our successes. When we are loved, we feel seen, understood, and valued. When we love others, we step outside of our own ego and contribute something meaningful to another person's life. Frankl believed that the greatest fulfillment comes from giving ourselves to something greater, and there is no greater purpose than love. Whether it's in a romantic relationship, a deep friendship, or the love we give to the world through kindness and service, love is what connects us to something beyond ourselves. So ask yourself, who do I truly love, and how can I love better? Because at the end of life, when everything else fades, the only thing that truly matters is the love we gave and the love we received. One of Viktor Frankl's most profound insights was that suffering by itself is not the enemy. It is a part of life, something that no one can fully escape. We all experience loss, failure, disappointment, and pain. Some suffer in obvious ways through illness, heartbreak, or injustice. Others suffer in quieter ways through loneliness, self-doubt, or the feeling that their life has no direction. But Frankl believed that suffering, while painful, could be transformed into something meaningful. He wrote, "Suffering ceases to be suffering the moment it finds meaning." In other words, when we give our pain a purpose, it stops being something that destroys us and instead becomes something that strengthens us. The idea that suffering is inevitable is not unique to Frankl. It has been a central theme in philosophy for thousands of years. The Stoic philosophers like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius also taught that pain and hardship are not what ruin people's lives, our reaction to them is. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor who faced constant war, betrayal, and personal tragedy, wrote in his journal, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." This is a key truth. We cannot always control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond. If suffering is an unavoidable part of life, then our only real choice is whether we let it break us or use it to grow stronger. Frankl learned this firsthand in the Nazi concentration camps. Every day, he saw prisoners who were beaten, starved, and dehumanized. He also saw how different people reacted to their suffering. Some gave up, losing all hope. They refused to eat, stopped talking, and simply lay down, waiting to die. Others responded with bitterness and anger, turning against their fellow prisoners, stealing food, or doing whatever it took to survive at the cost of others. But then, there were those who chose something different. These were the people who, despite their suffering, still found ways to be kind. They shared their last piece of bread. They helped others who were weaker. They encouraged their fellow prisoners, telling them to hold on just a little longer. These people were suffering just as much as everyone else, but they had found something greater than their pain, a reason to keep going. This is what Frankl meant when he said, "We have two choices in suffering. The first choice is to become bitter, resentful, and nihilistic. This is the path many people take when life becomes hard. They blame the world, they curse their fate, and they become filled with anger. They might turn to self-destructive behaviors, drinking, drugs, isolating themselves because they believe their suffering has no meaning. Some people become deeply cynical, convinced that life is just random suffering with no purpose. This path is understandable, but it leads nowhere. It turns pain into an endless cycle of negativity, making life feel even worse. The second choice is to use suffering as fuel to find a higher purpose. This doesn't mean pretending that pain isn't real or forcing yourself to be positive all the time. It means looking at suffering and asking, what can this teach me? How can I grow from this? How can I use this pain to help others? some of the greatest figures in history turned their suffering into something powerful. Helen Keller, who was blind and deaf, didn't let her suffering destroy her. She used it to inspire millions. Even Frankl himself, after surviving Auschwitz, could have spent his life full of anger and hatred. Instead, he devoted his life to teaching others how to find meaning, helping thousands of people in the process. But how do we actually transform pain into purpose? One of the best ways is through reflection and reframing. When you experience suffering, take time to ask yourself deeper questions. What is this pain teaching me? How can I use this experience to become wiser, stronger, or more compassionate? If you've gone through heartbreak, maybe it's an opportunity to learn about yourself, to grow into someone who is ready for a better relationship. If you failed at something, maybe it's teaching you resilience, showing you how to get back up and try again. Pain is a teacher, but only if we are willing to listen. Another exercise is writing about your suffering. Frankl often encouraged his patients to put their experiences into words. Writing forces you to organize your thoughts, to make sense of what happened, and to see patterns you might not notice otherwise. Studies have shown that people who journal about their struggles tend to process their emotions more effectively and recover from trauma faster. If you're going through a difficult time, try writing about it, not just what happened, but what you can learn from it. This simple practice can help turn chaos into clarity. A third way to turn suffering into strength is to use it to help others. Many people who have suffered deeply find meaning in guiding those who are going through similar pain. If you've battled depression, you can help others who are struggling. If you've lost a loved one, you can support those who are grieving. If you've experienced hardship, you can be an example of resilience. Helping others doesn't just make the world better, it also gives your own suffering a purpose. Frankl believed that one of the greatest ways to find meaning is through service. By taking your pain and using it to ease the suffering of others, you create something positive out of something negative. Lastly, practice acceptance and gratitude. This doesn't mean pretending that suffering is enjoyable. It means accepting that hardship is a natural part of life and choosing to focus on what remains. Even in Auschwitz, Frankl found moments of beauty, watching the sunrise, sharing a quiet conversation, hearing someone express hope. No matter how much we suffer, there is always something left to be grateful for. Maybe it's the people who stand by us. Maybe it's the lessons we've learned. Maybe it's simply the fact that we are still here, still capable of growing, still able to find meaning. At the end of the day, suffering is part of being human, but what defines us is not whether we suffer, it's what we do with it. You can choose to let your pain make you bitter, or you can choose to let it make you stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. Frankl showed us that even in the worst imaginable circumstances, people can still find purpose. And if meaning can be found in a concentration camp, it can certainly be found in our everyday struggles. So the next time life feels unbearable, ask yourself, how can I use this? How can I grow from this? Because in the end, it's not suffering that breaks us, it's the absence of meaning. And meaning is something that we have the power to create. One of the most powerful lessons Viktor Frankl teaches us is that true strength comes from within. The world is unpredictable and suffering is inevitable, but those who develop an unbreakable spirit can endure life's challenges with courage and purpose. Frankl introduced a concept called tragic optimism, the ability to maintain hope despite suffering. It's not about ignoring pain or pretending everything is fine. It's about recognizing that even in the worst situations, there is always a possibility for growth, for meaning, and for transformation. This kind of optimism is not based on blind positivity, but on the belief that life always holds the potential for purpose, no matter how difficult things become. We can see examples of tragic optimism in the lives of people who have survived extreme adversity. Holocaust survivors like Frankl himself, war veterans who returned home after witnessing unimaginable horrors, individuals who lost their ability to walk but still found ways to live fulfilling lives. All of them had a choice: to let their suffering define them, or to rise above it and find meaning. Some of the most resilient people in history were those who, instead of focusing on what they had lost, focused on what they could still do. They channeled their pain into something greater, refusing to be broken by their circumstances. This is the essence of an unbreakable spirit. Not a life free from suffering, but a life in which suffering is used as fuel for growth. How do we build this kind of mental resilience? The first step is to change how we see struggle. Many people see hardships as a sign that something is wrong, that life is unfair, or that they are being punished. But what if suffering is not an obstacle, but a teacher? If we start to see challenges as opportunities for strength, then every difficulty becomes a chance to grow. Frankl believed that those who embraced their suffering, who actively searched for meaning in it, were the ones who survived and thrived. When life gets hard, instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" try asking, "What can I learn from this? How can I become stronger because of this?" This shift in mindset is the foundation of resilience. Another key to developing an unbreakable spirit is having something greater than yourself to hold on to. This could be faith, philosophy, or a personal mission statement that guides you. Many people who have endured the worst hardships say that their belief in something greater helped them survive. For some, it was religious faith. For others, it was a philosophy like Stoicism or Buddhism that helped them accept suffering with grace. Even those who don't follow a specific religion can benefit from creating their own personal mission, a statement that defines their purpose and keeps them focused during hard times. If you don't have one, try writing down what matters most to you, what values you want to live by, and what kind of person you want to be, even when life gets hard. There are also daily practices that reinforce mental strength and meaning. One of the most powerful is gratitude. Frankl found moments of beauty even in the concentration camps, watching a sunrise, hearing someone share a kind word, remembering the face of a loved one. No matter how much suffering exists, there is always something to be grateful for. Start each day by identifying 3 things you appreciate in your life, even if they are small. Another practice is visualization, picturing yourself overcoming challenges, imagining yourself strong and capable. Frankl survived Auschwitz by visualizing himself giving lectures about what he had learned. What can you visualize that would give you strength? Finally, acts of service, helping others, even in small ways, can make us feel connected to something beyond our own pain. When we lift others up, we lift ourselves up as well. At some point in life, we must ask ourselves, what would I die for? This is not just a dramatic question, it is perhaps the most important question of all. It forces us to confront what truly matters, to strip away the superficial concerns of daily life, and to identify our deepest values. Most people spend their lives avoiding death, chasing comfort, and seeking safety. But true meaning is not found in safety. It is found in devotion to something greater than ourselves. Frankl believed in self-transcendence, the idea that the greatest fulfillment comes from living beyond oneself. When people dedicate their lives to something greater than their personal happiness, they become truly alive. History is filled with examples of individuals who found meaning not in seeking an easy life, but in sacrifice and purpose. Mahatma Gandhi dedicated his life to nonviolent resistance. Martin Luther King Jr. was willing to risk everything for civil rights. These people didn't just ask, What makes me happy? They asked. What is worth suffering for? And it's not just real historical figures. This theme runs through the greatest stories and fictional characters as well. Think of characters like Frodo Baggins in The Lord of the Rings. He didn't want to carry the burden of the One Ring, but he did because it was the right thing to do. Batman could have lived an easy life as a billionaire, but he chose to dedicate himself to fighting injustice. Even in ancient myths, heroes don't seek comfort, they seek purpose, and often that purpose requires sacrifice. These stories resonate with us because, deep down, we know that the greatest lives are not the easiest ones, but the most meaningful ones. So why is comfort and safety the enemy of deep meaning? Because when people prioritize comfort above all else, they often lose their sense of purpose. A life spent chasing security, avoiding risk, and staying in a safe little bubble might seem appealing, but it rarely leads to fulfillment. Many people who achieve financial success and an easy lifestyle still feel empty because they have nothing truly worth struggling for. Meaning requires challenge. It requires devotion to something beyond the self. Frankl saw this in Auschwitz. Those who had a reason to live, something to hold on to, were the ones who survived. The same applies to us today. The connection between sacrifice, devotion, and purpose is clear. People who live meaningful lives are willing to suffer for what they believe in. Parents sacrifice for their children. Artists and creators dedicate years to their work, often without recognition. Athletes push their bodies to the limit not just for glory, but because they believe in something greater, the pursuit of excellence. Soldiers risk their lives not because they love war, but because they believe in protecting others. Sacrifice is not a sign of weakness. It is the highest form of commitment. If you want to live a life of meaning, ask yourself, what am I willing to suffer for? What am I willing to dedicate my life to, even if it's hard? Because the answer to that question is the key to finding your purpose. It is not about what makes you comfortable or what brings you pleasure in the short term. It is about what lights a fire in your soul, what makes you feel truly alive. At the end of life, no one looks back and feels proud of how comfortable they were. They feel proud of the things they devoted themselves to, the people they loved, the causes they fought for, the challenges they overcame. If you don't know what you would die for, then start by asking, what do I want to live for? Because when you find something worth living for, you'll have something worth fighting for. We've covered a lot in this video, diving deep into Viktor Frankl's philosophy and the incredible power of meaning. Now the real question is, how do we take these ideas and apply them to our lives? Knowledge alone isn't enough. Understanding Frankl's teachings means little if we don't act on them. The truth is, most people drift through life without ever confronting these ideas, without ever asking themselves the hard questions. They wake up, go to work, distract themselves, and repeat the cycle day after day, all while feeling an underlying sense of emptiness. But Frankl's work shows us that life does not have to be this way. Meaning is not something that happens to us, it is something we must actively search for, something we must create. Let's briefly recap the most important lessons we've discussed. First, we explored why so many people feel lost today. The modern world is filled with distractions, but no amount of entertainment, consumerism, or social media can replace the deep need for purpose. People chase happiness, thinking it will give them fulfillment, but happiness is not something you can chase directly, it is a byproduct of meaning. Without meaning, people fall into despair, addiction, and anxiety. Frankl called this the existential vacuum, and he believed that overcoming it required finding something truly worth living for. Then, we looked at the role of work and contribution in creating a meaningful life. Work is not just about making money, It is about creating something valuable, about giving something to the world. Even in Auschwitz, Frankl saw that those who found ways to contribute, whether by helping others, fixing things, or even just offering a kind word, were the ones who endured. The lesson here is simple. If you want to feel fulfilled, find a way to contribute. Give something to the world, and the world will give something back to you. Next, we explored love and relationships as sources of meaning. Frankl believed that love was the highest human experience, and for good reason. The people we love, whether friends, family, or romantic partners, give our lives depth and purpose. But love is not just about attachment. It is about seeing someone for who they truly are and wanting the best for them, even beyond our own needs. Love is not about filling a void. It is about connection, sacrifice, and shared meaning. We then talked about suffering and how to turn pain into strength. Frankl's famous quote, "Suffering ceases to be suffering the moment it finds meaning," reminds us that pain, when given a purpose, can transform us. Everyone suffers at some point, but not everyone uses their suffering to grow. We always have two choices: become bitter and resentful, or use our struggles to build something greater. The people who survive life's hardest moments are those who refuse to see suffering as meaningless. They turn their pain into fuel, into wisdom, into something that can help others. Then we discussed how to cultivate an unbreakable spirit. Frankl introduced the idea of tragic optimism, the ability to maintain hope despite suffering. This is not naive positivity, but a conscious choice to believe that life always has meaning, even in the worst moments. Mental resilience is built not by avoiding pain, but by facing it head-on, learning from it, and growing stronger because of it. The most resilient people are not the ones who have had an easy life. They are the ones who have suffered deeply, but refuse to let their suffering define them. And finally, we asked the most important question of all: what would you die for? Frankl believed that meaning is found in self-transcendence, in living for something beyond ourselves. He saw that comfort and safety are not what make life fulfilling. Sacrifice and devotion to a cause are. Those who live only for themselves often feel empty, while those who dedicate themselves to something greater experience deep fulfillment. Whether it's a person, a mission, or a purpose, finding something you are willing to fight for, even suffer for, gives life its deepest meaning. Now that we understand these key lessons, the next step is putting them into action. Here is a simple 3-step plan to help you begin your own search for meaning. 1. Identify your deepest values and what resonates with you. Before you can live a meaningful life, you need to know what truly matters to you. Most people never take the time to ask themselves, what do I care about? What excites me? What kind of impact do I want to have? Start by making a list of the things that resonate deeply with you, whether it's creativity, helping others, learning, adventure, justice, or something else. Your values are like a compass, guiding you toward a life that feels authentic and fulfilling. A good exercise is to think about the moments when you have felt most alive. What were you doing? Who were you with? What kind of challenges were you facing? These moments often reveal what truly matters to you. If you're not sure where to start, ask yourself, if I had only 5 years left to live, what would I spend my time doing? Your answers will give you clues about where your meaning lies. 2. Align your daily actions with something beyond yourself. Once you know your values, the next step is living according to them. It's not enough to think about meaning, you have to act on it. This means making choices every day that reflect what you care about. If you value connection, make time for the people you love. If you value creativity, work on something that expresses who you are. If you value growth, challenge yourself to learn new things. Most importantly, find a way to contribute to something bigger than yourself. This doesn't mean you have to change the world overnight. Start small, help someone in need, mentor a younger person, create something that inspires others. Frankl believed that self-transcendence, the ability to go beyond yourself and serve something greater, was the key to fulfillment. The more you give, the more meaning you will find. 3. Accept suffering as part of the journey, not something to avoid. Finally, embrace the truth that suffering is inevitable, but it does not have to be meaningless. Life will always have hardships, but if you can see them as opportunities for growth rather than just obstacles, you will develop the resilience to keep going. Instead of avoiding discomfort, lean into it. When things get difficult, ask yourself, what is this teaching me? How can I use this experience to become wiser, stronger, and more compassionate? One of the biggest mistakes people make is thinking that a meaningful life is an easy life. But the most meaningful lives are often the hardest ones. They are filled with challenges, sacrifices, and moments of doubt. But they are also filled with depth, purpose, and a sense of fulfillment that cannot be bought or faked. At the core of Frankl's philosophy is one final powerful idea. Life is constantly asking you a question. It's not about what you want from life, it's about what life expects from you. Every challenge you face, every hardship you endure, is life asking, what will you do with this? Will you let suffering break you, or will you use it to build something greater? Will you live only for yourself, or will you dedicate yourself to something beyond you? Will you spend your time chasing comfort, or will you seek out real, lasting purpose? These are the questions that define a meaningful life, and in the end, you are the only one who can answer them. So take these ideas, reflect on them, and most importantly, act on them. Because meaning is not something you wait for, it's something you create.